Okay. I will have a seating chart. So if you don't like where you're sitting today, sit somewhere different Tuesday, because wherever you sit Tuesday is where I'm going to put you down. I'm not going to fill it in today. Obviously, it's a big class. There's not a lot of empty seats, but I do want you to sit in the same thing. That helps me learn who you are. So if you don't like where you are, pick a different place on Tuesday. I'm going to tell y'all just kind of basically how the course is set up and what's expected of you. As a general note, I do teach this class at 8 a.m. also on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you ever have a conflict with this class, you can always come to the 8 o'clock class. They're on the exact same track. We're teaching the same thing. So if you ever need to come at 8, I mean, obviously, you wouldn't have signed up for 9:30 if you wanted to come at 8, right? You'd be in that class now. And you'd much rather be here at 9:30 than 8. But just know that's an option for you if you need to take that option at any point. All right, so I'm a full-time lecturer at CSU, but I'm also a practicing attorney, so I kind of have two jobs. I'm on campus on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the whole morning. I teach at 8 a.m., 9:30 a.m., and then I'll have office hours till about noon. The rest of the week, I'm at my office downtown. If you need to see me anytime, I'm available. I do keep office hours from 11 to 12 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I'm available anytime, Zoom, in person, phone call. If you need to get a hold of me, just let me know and we'll set that up. We may have to meet downtown some other days, or we can, like I said, we can always Zoom, but I'm glad to be available for you. The reason that being a lawyer is how I'm qualified to teach this class. This is the only thing I could teach at CSU. And that's consequently why they hired me to do it, obviously. And so what I bring to the class, hopefully, is some real world experience and some, actual practical knowledge about what happens in these areas that we're going to talk about this year. So this is generally an interesting class. The feedback that I get from students, it's a class that's easy to engage in. We have a lot of discussion. This is not a class like accounting where there's one answer and there's a formula and the numbers have to come out right. The law is very, very gray. It is not a black and white subject. And so we'll have a lot of good discussion. There'll be lots of questions that begin with what about or what if. You'll be surprised how many different things people will want to ask. And I'll welcome that. We'll learn so much better by being a class that's engaged. So I hope that you will enjoy it. I do find that students generally do, but some people, it's just not their thing. If it's not your thing, then I understand. It doesn't hurt my feelings. The best way to contact me is to text me. My cell phone number is in the syllabus. And I also have a CSU email and I have a work email. I check my work email more than my CSU email, but if you send me a CSU email, I'll get it to you. If you want the fastest response from me, text me. Otherwise, the next best way to contact me is that work email, and then probably third, I would say, is a CSU email. You can't go wrong by copying me on both emails, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I do have an attendance policy, and I do follow it pretty strictly, and here's how it works. I don't worry about excused or unexcused absences. I just give you 4. You can use them however you want throughout the semester. But once you've used them up, that's all you got. And if you miss more than 4 classes, then you'll end up getting dropped. Use your own judgment. We're all grown-ups. I understand that you have, some of you have families, you've got jobs. This is not the only class you have. We have student athletes in this class. You got folks with, you got lives. You have other things to do besides business law. I understand that. But my policy is designed to take the pressure off of you having to let me know every time you're not coming and come up with a reason why. Doesn't matter to me. You don't have to let me know if you're not going to be here. If you're not here, I'll just mark you absent, and that's just one of your absences. Just don't miss more than 4 classes. A couple other reasons for that is one is that I just know from experience, from being a student and being an instructor, that when you come to class, you do better in the class. That's just no two ways about that. So in order for you to be successful, I want you to be here. And if I'm going to come and lecture, then you're going to come and, you got to come and listen to me. That's just kind of the deal. So that's how that works. If you have things like travel for athletics, I will excuse that. I will not count that against you. If you have things like, I had a student in my 8 o'clock class say, well, I'm getting my knee replaced over spring break. I will work with you on anything you've got as long as you let me know ahead of time. If you say, hey, professor, I've got this work trip, I'm going on a honeymoon, I've got an operation, my kid's having an operation, let me know ahead of time and I will be glad to work with you and be flexible. What I don't do is after the fact, hey, professor, I know I've already missed 4 classes, but I've got this. Then that doesn't work for me. As long as you're proactive and you let me know ahead of time, I'll be glad to work with you. It's just the after the fact stuff that just doesn't fly. So that's how the attendance policy works. There is no textbook for this class. That's a trade-off that I've come to accept and that I finally made. Because what I found is that you guys just don't like reading textbooks. And I can't blame you for that. I mean, I don't blame you. But it was really important to me that you read. And so the trade-off I finally came to accept was that if I don't have a textbook, you don't have to read it, but I'm going to give you some readings along the way, and you do have to read those. That's a trade-off. I'm not asking you to read pages and pages and pages of a textbook, but I am asking you to read certain things. And I think that's a pretty fair trade-off, and it results in a lot less reading for you. So that's how we work as far as the textbook goes. The way I've set the course up is when you look on Cougar View, and hopefully all of you have done this already, but if you will look on Cougar View in content, I've set it up where we're going to go in units. And they're roughly 1 week long. Some units will be 2 weeks because there'll be a lot to cover. But we're doing Unit 1 starting today, and that'll be today's class and next week's classes will be Unit 1. And the beginning of every unit, you'll see this exact same format. It's going to tell you what you're required to read, and all these are posted to the same content module. It's going to show you what the assignments are and when they're due. It's going to show you whether or not we have a discussion question and when it's due. And then I will also post lecture videos so that if you miss a class, you can watch the video. It's also because I teach 2 online sections and they do the exact same thing that we're doing. So they're watching the lecture. This is part of their class as well. So I will post all of that here. Everything you need is right here. We run on a schedule like this. Your weeks begin on Tuesday mornings and they end on Monday nights. So assignments are always due on Monday night at the end of the unit we're covering, 11:59 p.m. So for example, you're going to have 2 assignments for this unit. They will not be due until next Monday, January 30th at 11:59 p.m. You have 2 discussion questions for this unit. One of them is due Monday night, next Monday night, and then the next one is due the following Monday night. But all this is right here. It's in red writing when things are due. If anybody has a question about it, just let me know. I've tried to simplify this and make this as not confusing as possible, but everybody's mind works differently. So what is clear to me might be confusing to you and vice versa. So just let me know if you have any question about how we're going to work it. This course is set up in this way. So I want you to think about, if you think about the field of medicine. If you have a problem with your foot, you're not going to go to a cancer doctor. You're not going to go to a psychologist. You're not going to go to a neurologist. You're going to go to the foot doctor, right? If you have cancer, you're not going to go to the foot doctor. You're going to go to the cancer doctor. Well, the law is like that in this way. There are many, many different fields and subdivisions within the law. There are tax lawyers. There are criminal lawyers. There are bankruptcy lawyers. There are divorce lawyers. There are corporate lawyers. And there are employment law. I mean, I could go on and on. And some of it's interrelated, but most of it's not. If you need a divorce, you're not going to go to a tax lawyer. You're going to find the meanest divorce lawyer you can. Hopefully not. Just kidding. So it would be impossible to say that in business law, we're going to cover everything. In law school, law students spend a whole year on evidence. They spend a whole year on the Constitution. They spend a whole year on criminal law. We're not getting that deep into the weeds. The goal is not to teach you what the law is. The goal of this class is to expose you to all the different areas and ways that the law interacts with business so that you can recognize them when they come up and you'll know what kind of issues you're facing. I want you to be literate in the basics of the law language and the way that they interact with business. That's the goal of this class, to be able to think critically about the situations and issues that you face. I mentioned earlier, it's not like accounting where we got a formula. We're going to, hopefully by the end of the semester, you'll learn how to argue both sides of something. You'll learn how to look at it from both ways. It's just not a subject where there are black and white solutions to everything. Kind of like life. So that's kind of what we're going to do. We're going to spend, a week on criminal law, a week on tort law, a couple weeks on employment law. So we'll just be sort of scratching the surface on all these different areas. The first thing we're going to study is just the basic foundation of our court system, different sources of law. It will probably be a little bit of a review for you of high school civics, but it's important that we start there. Do we have any international students? None? That's very unusual. All right. I like the international students because they bring us some different perspective, but that is fine. Your grades are going to be determined by, it's made up of 85% of assignments. You have roughly an assignment a week. By the end of the semester, you'll have 10, 12, 13 assignments, depending on how much progress we make. That'll be 85% of your grade, and then the final is 15%. Your assignments are, with the exception of one or two assignments, they're all in quiz form. Multiple choice, true, false. It's all take home. The final and all the assignments that we do in this class, all done at your own pace. And they have due dates, but you do them when you want to do them. I find that is better for a lot of different reasons. Fits your schedule better to be tested when you want to be tested, but also frees up time in class for us to have learning and discussion and engagement. And I just think it's really hard, and it puts a lot of pressure on folks to come in and try to test you guys on 6 weeks worth of stuff in an hour. I mean, it just doesn't set up very well to that. So what I'd rather do is just test you as we go on your assignments. Everything that I test you on, everything on your quizzes and on your assignments, we go over in class. Not telling you the answers, but it's over content that I cover. I'm not going to test you or quiz you on anything that we don't talk about in class. I make up my own quizzes. The answers to my quizzes and tests, you can't find them online anywhere. It's all from the content that I present to you in class. All found right here. So if you come to class and you pay attention and you take notes and you read everything that I've assigned, you'll do really well in this class. You're 85% of the way there if you just do that. I promise you. My goal is for you to learn, and I think if you come and listen and read, there's no way you won't learn. So that's kind of the way it's set up. Your final exam, we don't need to worry about this at all right now, but folks always want to know. So the final exam is comprehensive, but I do give you a study guide and I tell you the topics that are on it. I don't believe in I don't want you to waste time studying for something that I'm not testing you on. So when we get to the end of the semester, we'll have a review session and I'll give you a pretty detailed study guide and tell you every little topic that I'm testing you on. And hopefully that'll help you focus your study and you won't waste any time. I don't accept late work, but in the same way that I've talked to you about absences, if you have something that you know is going to be a problem with a deadline ahead of time, let me know and I'll be glad to work with you on that deadline. I've got this big project coming up at work, or something's going on with my kids, or we've got this trip planned that, I won at work or something like that. I will work with you, but you gotta let me know ahead of time. When you let me know after the fact, then that just doesn't work. So I'm glad to be flexible with anybody who will work with me ahead of time. The grading scale is nothing. It's the same grading scale everybody uses. 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 90 is B. But I will say this. When I get to the end of the semester and I look at the grade distribution, obviously anybody with a 90 and above will make an A. But I will very often award A's at a level lower than 90. The cutoff might be 86 or 87. It might be 90. It just depends on the distribution of grades at the end. So I don't want you to get too hung up and super worried about what your exact grade is. If you're a person that worries about grades, talk to me. Just talk to me during the semester. I'll be glad to talk you through it. I'm also a professor that at the end of the semester, when I look at somebody with an 88 or 77, or hopefully no 67s, if that's a person who's been engaged in class and who's come to class and I know has made an effort, then I'm going to bump that grade up every time. So that does matter to me. And if you're a person who doesn't like participating, that's fine. I don't hold that against you. I know some folks don't like talking in public. They don't like other people to hear, and they're just shy. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't mind that at all. But I just want you to know that it does help you if you're a person who is engaged in class and shows that you're making an effort. That's I don't know about other professors, but I know that's true with me. I am going to call on you. That's one of the reasons I have a seating chart and I learned your name. I'm going to call on you and ask you questions about the things that we've read and when we have discussion. So be prepared for that. I will say to you, Mr. So-and-so, what happened, tell me about this case or what happened in this case. So I do need you to be prepared for that. The trade-off, again, I'm not giving you any busy work or extra stuff to read, but I do expect everybody to read the stuff that I do assign. I kind of work it like this. On Tuesdays, I'll mostly lecture about whatever the topic is for that week, or that unit. And then on Thursdays is more discussion about the assigned reading. So you really don't have to come to class on Tuesdays having done anything ahead of time. But by Thursday's class is when you really need to have everything read. And that'll be true for this first unit. You think I'd be smoother in my 9:30 class since I just said all this in my 8 o'clock class, but I feel like my brain thinks that since I've already said it today, it doesn't have to say it again. So I always hate this part of the class, but I have to say it. Don't cheat. I will fail you if you cheat. I will fail you if you cheat. I will fail you if you cheat. Just want everybody to hear that up front. I will fail you if you cheat. I had a couple semesters ago, somebody put an assignment of mine on Chegg.com or whatever, but they put the assignment up with all wrong answers. And not only were the answers wrong, but they didn't even make sense. They weren't even it was like gibberish. But there were 9 people who still copied word for word from this gibberish. And so when I read through it, I was like, this doesn't even make any sense. And then I read it 9 times and I was like, all right, what's going on? So I researched it and figured out what was going on. The answers to my assignments are found in class. They're not found online. Don't trust any of that stuff that you see. I promise you, it will bite you in the butt. Not only did those people cheat, but they did a terrible job at cheating. So if you're going to cheat, right, at least, cheat well. So no, I don't mean that really. But if you're going to cheat, it would make sense that you'd do better than 0. Don't wait till Monday night generally to do your assignments, but I do understand that you guys have lives and families and jobs and other things to do. If you're one of those people that's a deadline worker, I'm kind of like that. You do it you wait till the end of this week to do your assignment. That's fine. It's totally up to you. But I would just encourage you to at least look at what we've got to do for that unit and try to plan your time as wisely as you can. I like feedback. And so I'm not a professor who thinks that I know everything about how this ought to be done. I've been teaching for a good while, but I'm always open for suggestions. If I'm doing something that's not helpful, or if there's something I could be doing that's helpful to you, please let me know. Or if there's something that you don't understand or it's confusing, I'm available to you. Please don't hesitate to ask me a question. I can't represent anybody, so if anybody has any legal issues, I can't be your lawyer. But you're welcome to ask me questions. I can always point you in the right direction. Hope nobody needs a lawyer as we get through this semester. You can't call me in the middle of the night if you get arrested. There's nothing I can do about that. That doesn't happen. I'm just kidding. All right. So any questions about anything so far? No questions? All right. So if that is the case, then we're going to jump right into lecture. And we're going to start with sources of law. So when we think about where does the law come from, lots of different places. There's not one book or one website or one place that you could go and find all the laws on one topic. They come from a lot of different places. The primary source, the basis for any law, is the Constitution of the United States. You guys know this. Y'all took high school civics. That is the supreme law of the land. No other law passed by any other body, any state, any other government entity can conflict with the Constitution. It's the boss. But it's not the only law we have, obviously. There are a lot of other sources of law. Each state has their own constitution. So as a Georgia resident, I am subject to the United States Constitution and the Georgia Constitution. Got to follow both those sets of laws. Now, this is basic, but I just want to make sure at the beginning everybody is on the same page with me. We're going to talk a lot about the state government and the federal government. State government is obviously the government of whatever state we're talking about. The federal government means the United States government. Congress, the Supreme Court of the United States, the President, the government of the USA, that is the federal government. I know that's basic, but we just got to make sure from the beginning we're on the same page on that. All right, and so we're going to have some overlap between federal law and state law, and then local law, even. So constitutional law is the first source of law. both at the federal level, the U.S. Constitution, and at the state level, each state's individual constitution. The next category of laws we have are statutes. Statutes are laws passed by a legislative body. So on the federal level, a statute would be passed by U.S. Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate. The laws they pass are statutes. On a state level, state statutes are what the laws that are passed by state legislatures. So the legislature of Georgia will pass statutes that pertain to Georgians. And every state will have their own statutes. Statutes can also be created by government entities on a lower level than a state, like a county or a city. So the city of Columbus, for example, can pass statutes, and they do. City council does. Those are laws that we have to follow. Incidentally, the lecture that I'm giving, I post the outline to Cougar View. It's in Word form, so you don't have to write down everything I'm saying, but you can go through and make other notes as you want. But it's there for you to take notes as you want. I'm teaching straight from the outline. I may go down some rabbit holes, but I'm going to come back to the outline eventually. All right, so those are statutes. We also have a body of law called administrative law. All right, who makes administrative law? Administrative agencies make administrative law. What's an administrative agency? So on the federal level, think the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, is a federal agency. They make laws about taxes. They might decide like what's deductible as a business expense, or what is allowable for a deduction as an educational expense. These are made up by the IRS, and we've got to follow those. Those are law. Administrative law is called rules. Administrative agencies make rules, and they're law. It's just a different source of law. On the federal level, continuing along those lines, other agencies might be the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Anybody have to deal with OSHA in their jobs? You do? You know what I'm talking about? They're a pain in the ass. They got all kind of crazy rules about how tall ladders have to be and, you know, all that kind of thing. That's law. It's not passed by Congress. It wasn't passed by a state legislature, but it was a rule made by a government agency, and we got to follow that. The Environmental Protection Agency makes rules about discharge and pollutants and what we can put in the air or the water. On a state level, we've got the equivalent of the IRS and the Georgia Department of Revenue. They make rules about what we can and can't claim as deductions or how we pay our state taxes. That's law. The Georgia Department of, well, it's just escaping me right now. What's the agency that makes rules for hunting? Yeah, Fish and Wildlife. On the federal level, that's right. And the Georgia level is, which is Department of, that's right. Thank you. I don't know why that escaped me. They make rules about when hunting season is. That's law. That didn't get passed by any legislature, but we're bound to follow it. And if we break it, there are consequences. So administrative law is a very, very large source of law. You know, when we think about statutes being passed by a legislature, you know, that's when you got the, you know, you have your representatives or senators voting yes or no and majority rules and all that. When agencies make rules, they go through a much different process. They just publish their proposed rules that are open for a period of comment, and the public is welcome to comment on rules. Anybody here ever commented on a proposed agency rule? I didn't think so. They probably didn't even know that was possible, right? They open them up for a period of comment, and then at the end of that comment period, they issue what becomes the rule, and that's the law. So it's just passed a very, very different way. So that is a source of law. So when you hear the word rules, think agency. That's administrative law. Statutes, think legislature. That's statutory law. All right, we also have a source of law referred to as case law. And this originated with in the English common law. The American legal system is based upon the British common law tradition, which makes sense. And it began back when they didn't have, so this is going back to merry old England, hundreds of years ago, when there wasn't one book with all the statutes in it or the laws in it. Each judge would make a decision based on the facts of whatever case came before him or her. And whatever decision they made would become precedent. In other words, future cases that came before the court would be handled in the same way. So if I got caught stealing bread from my neighbor, and I'm making all this up, I got 1 night in jail. Future cases of people stealing from neighbors would be 1 night in jail for bread, or 2 nights in jail for cheese, or I'm just making this up. But you see, but they build on what courts have done in similar circumstances in the past. And the purpose of that was to give some predictability to life, everyday life. We could govern our actions knowing what the consequences would be, so to speak. And it also kept judges from being arbitrary and unfair and saying, well, you stole cheese, but I'm just going to let you off with a warning. That would be unfair to us if our neighbor got off with a warning and we had to spend the night in jail. So the English common law tradition began that judges would follow the decisions of prior judges and prior courts in the same circumstances. That still exists today. Now, we have other sources of law today besides the common law. We have statutes, we have constitutions, we have rules that agencies make. But when we have cases that go before courts and they interpret these different laws, then those become binding on future courts. That's case law. So written decisions of courts that interpret the law is case law. Tuesday, I'll bring you an example. Well, we're going to read some case law for next week. But every case that has a written decision gets published in a book. Now, obviously, we search it online nowadays, but it still gets published in a physical book. So that if we needed to search past cases, we could do it. When I was in law school, we had to actually search the books. That was before y'all got computerized. Now we do our legal research. We don't have to go from book to book. Do it all online with keyword searches. It's wonderful. But it wasn't always that way. So here's an example of how case law works. The idea that courts will follow prior decisions, the Latin term for that is stare decisis. It's in your outline, it's in your notes. It's important for you to know. But that is the doctrine that courts will generally follow prior decisions. They're not bound to. If they were bound to follow prior decisions, the law would never change. So when could a court change the law? When could a court depart from precedent? It happens. I'll give you 2 examples. One example is a case that you're going to read for next week. It's a Supreme Court case, a U.S. Supreme Court case Brown versus Board of Education. You guys are familiar with this case. That is the case that ended segregation in public schools years and years and years ago. Up until that case, there had been decisions from the courts that said that the idea of separate but equal public schools for races was constitutional. That was legal. That was lawful. There were decisions of the Supreme Court that said the idea of separate but equal does not violate the Constitution. Those cases were case law. They were precedent. They were binding on other courts under stare decisis. Until the Supreme Court came along in Brown versus Board of Education and said, we're not going to follow precedent here. We are departing from precedent. We're overturning that law. We are finding that from here on out, the Constitution does not allow public schools to be separate but equal. That is no longer legal. So we follow precedent, but courts are not bound to it. Now, in order to keep a predictable, logical framework and system of laws, a court can't just willy-nilly decide not to follow precedent because they just don't feel like it. Or that court can't say, yeah, I know that the other cases say this, but we're just going to ignore it this time. That's not how it works. The court has to articulate a clear reason for the departure from precedent. They have to express that in the written opinion in the case law. A recent example of the court departing from precedent is the overturn last year of the case of Roe versus Wade, which guaranteed a woman's right to get an abortion. We're not debating abortion, so don't anybody worry. I don't do politics in this class. But this is a very recent example of what we're talking about. So years and years ago, the Supreme Court found in the case of Roe versus Wade that the U.S. Constitution did protect a woman's right to get an abortion. And that was precedent, and that got followed all the way up until last year when the Supreme Court said, nope, we've now decided that that is no longer the law. We are going to not follow that precedent, and they laid out all their reasons why. And again, we're not debating abortion. But the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. They departed from precedent. They changed the law. So that now, going forward, until it's changed again, if it's changed again, be up to the courts or the legislature. They significantly limited a woman's right to have an abortion. So that example is to illustrate to you how the doctrine of stare decisis and precedent generally works. Another quick example of that is, let's say that the Georgia legislature passed a rule that said it was illegal to wear green hoodies to class. And that's the statute that they passed. That's the only text of the law. It is illegal to wear green hoodies to class. Well, what does that mean? How do we interpret that? That's for the courts to decide, right? So let's say that I get arrested for wearing a lime green hoodie. And I go before the court, and my argument is, this is not green, it's lime green. And the judge says, well, I interpret the statute as saying green covers lime green. So going forward, we know that lime green, if you wear a lime green hoodie, you're going to be arrested for violating that law. Well, what about the person who comes in walking down the street wearing a turquoise hoodie? And they get arrested for violating the law against green hoodies. And they go to court and say, turquoise isn't green, judge. And the judge says, you know what? You're right. Turquoise is not green. So it's legal to wear turquoise. So now we've got a case that says you can't wear lime green. We got case law that says you can wear turquoise. Now, what if I wear a color of hoodie the next day that is somewhere between turquoise and lime green? I get arrested. I go to court. My lawyer needs to argue that this color of hoodie is way closer to turquoise than it is lime green. Judge, this is just like the turquoise case. This is nothing like the lime green case. Look at these colors. The judge has got to decide, is that color green or not? The judge will make a decision. Let's say that, I don't know what color it is, Kermit the Frog green. And they say Kermit the Frog green is green. So now we've got that case that says that you can't do that. So you see, as more and more cases come, there's infinite shades of green, right? There's infinite shades of green. Every time we have a different shade of green, the court's going to have to decide, is that green or not? And when we go to court, my lawyer, if I'm the one who's arrested, I'm going to be looking for all the cases where the court said that color wasn't green. And I'm going to be looking for all the ways that my case looks like that. Because I want the court to follow that precedent. The state, on the other hand, who arrested me and is prosecuting me, is going to look for all the cases where the court said that something was green. And they're going to argue about how much my case fits those cases and is similar to those cases. And the facts of my case are similar to those cases. That's how precedent works. Sometimes you'll have a case that's exactly like precedent. And it's hard to argue from it. But most cases are not black and white. And it's the lawyer's job to argue that the case is more like this or more like this, and to give the court a reason to differentiate those cases. So the more shades of green we get, the more cases that go before a judge, the more written opinions we have, the larger the body of law is about what is and isn't green. Now that's an overly simplistic example. A real life example of that would be like the Americans with Disabilities Act is a federal statute that says that employers cannot discriminate against employees on the basis of a disability. I can't not hire somebody because they have a disability. I can't fire somebody because they have a disability. I can't not promote somebody because they have a disability. Well, what is a disability? The statute defines it as a condition that limits a major life activity. What is major life activity? What is a limit? What is, the statute says significantly limits. What is significantly limits? How do we know what that is? Well, we know because as cases come before courts, they start publishing decisions about this condition does limit a major life activity. This condition doesn't. So we get these cases and then we can go to them and say, how is my condition like these that are disabilities or unlike these that aren't disabilities? If that makes sense. So just like you have a million shades of green, you got a million different conditions that might constitute a disability. And there's not a list you can go look at to see whether or not your disability is, quote, on the list or not. That's just not how it works. If Congress had to sit down, think about this. If Congress had to sit and make a list of what a disability is and what isn't, would they ever get anything else done? Well, they don't get anything done anyway. So they might as well spend their time making lists. But you can just see, you can make a list of 10,000 things that are disabilities. And I guarantee you the first thing that would come up would be something that nobody thought of. That's just life. That's the way it works. We're human beings. We're not computers. And so the law kind of works that way. So that is hopefully not a confusing explanation of kind of how case law works. So when you step back for a second, we think about all the different sources of law. You got the Constitution, written very broadly and generally. You have the right to freedom of speech. The Constitution guarantees that. Doesn't exactly say what that means. We have case law that interprets laws. We have statutes that legislative bodies pass. And we have rules that administrative agencies make. All of that combines to form the law that we all have to follow. And it's confusing. There are a lot of laws that are laws that we don't even know about, really, because they don't impact. I mean, we don't, there are laws about what ships can carry on the sea. That doesn't concern me. I don't have a ship. I'm not going out on the sea. I'm not carrying any cargo on the sea. It just doesn't apply to me. We're more familiar with, crimes, because we see those have a more of a real impact, like speed limits and things like that, unfortunately. But that is just sort of a big, broad overview of all the different sources of law. I think I'm going to stop there. No, I'm going to keep going a little bit. I'm going to go one more. So if you're on the outline, you're following along. I'm skipping all the way down to classifications of law. So I want you to understand. Well, let me back up for a second. One of the reasons that this class is not about teaching you what the law is that the law is always changing. So I'm not going to waste time telling you that the law is X when tomorrow it could be Y. The law is also different between geographical locations. So I could tell you the ins and outs of Georgia contract law, but I've got online students listening to me right now from other states. The laws of contracts in Alabama are different than Georgia. There's some overlap, but they're different. Same for South Carolina, same for Alaska. The law is also so detailed that even lawyers, I know a lot of what the law is, but whenever I look into an issue in detail, I go back and read it. I go back and see what it is. It's not like something that once I get it in my head, I know it. It's always evolving. So even my specialty now is adoptions. I've been doing adoptions for 15 years. And I do a lot of different areas of law, but that's my main focus. I know the adoption laws of Georgia pretty much backwards and forwards, but I still always go right back to it. I've got a little code book on my desk, and I pull it open, and I'll make sure every time that I'm not missing something. So there's no point in me teaching you the law. That's not what we're here for. If you need a lawyer, you'll go get a lawyer for that, right? Companies have lawyers. You need a lawyer. If you get a DUI, you're going to go get a DUI lawyer. You need a divorce, you're going to go get a divorce lawyer. But I do want you to be able to sort of recognize the areas where, okay, this is a legal issue. I do remember this. I need to be careful about this. This is something I may need to ask a question about, or this is something we need to be careful about, or we need to get a legal opinion on. All right, so back to the outline. If I had to divide the law up into classes, two different areas, it's this. There is criminal law and there's civil law. And they're very different. And the easiest way to think about it is anything that's not a criminal law is civil law. So civil law is basically everything else. Tax law is civil law. Divorce law is civil law. Suing somebody for getting in an auto accident is civil law. You know, Morgan and Morgan and For the People and all that's civil law. Criminal law is specifically the body of law that is statutes that prohibit conduct or activity and make something a crime or the lack of activity a crime. Most of the time it's conduct. Like you can't hit people, you can't steal from people, you can't kill people. But it's also a crime not to file your taxes. So it could be an omission too. And we're going to get into criminal law in a lot more depth. But when you hear the difference, I just want you to appreciate the difference between civil law and criminal law. Civil law mostly deals with rules and conduct of people and people, or people and companies, each other. Criminal law is the state or the federal government versus a person who's committed a crime. Two totally different things. Did you have a question? I thought I saw a hand up. No hands up? Okay. Any questions? I think that's a good place for us to stop. So Tuesday, I will finish the lecture for courts and alternative dispute resolution. Then next Thursday, we're going to have a lot of discussion on the assigned readings and so on and so forth. So you really don't have anything to do for Tuesday as far as reading goes, but you do have that discussion question that's due Monday night. If I mentioned this to y'all, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused between my two classes. Did I talk to y'all about how the discussion questions are going to be an assignment grade? I did? Okay. The discussion, we're going to have a discussion pretty much every week, and the discussion questions all together are going to be one grade. So at the end of the semester, if I had 10 discussion questions and you did all 10, you get 100. It's an easy 100. But if you only did 5, you're going to get a 50. That will not be good. I don't grade you on the quality of your response as long as it's coherent. I just grade that you did it. So do pay attention to the discussion questions and make sure you do those. The one for Monday night is just tell me who you are, where you're from, what you're majoring in, something about you. That just helps me get to know you, and then it helps facilitate class discussion, because I promise you there'll be some really interesting things that I'll find out about you that are applicable to the class. So other than that, that's all I got. Y'all have a good weekend. See you Tuesday.